It is known as the Ring of Fire, a giant circle of volcanoes and seismic fault lines that embraces much of the Pacific Ocean. At its heart is Central America. Here, a chain of over 40 volcanoes extends 1,000 kilometers along the Pacific coast, from Guatemala to Costa Rica. There are so many, in fact, that several Central American countries feature volcanoes on their flags. One of them is the Republic of Nicaragua. Earthquakes are so common here that many people living in the Nicaraguan capital of Managua take them for granted, until one dark December day in 1972 changes the face of the city and the country forever. December 22nd, 1972. With Christmas only days away, the streets of Managua are filled with holiday crowds enjoying the magic of the season.
People were shopping, people were in the stores, in the main streets. There was a festive mood, and people were looking forward to Christmas.
A dictatorship since 1937, Nicaragua has enjoyed promising economic growth throughout the 1960s and 70s. As its capital city, Managua is also its trade and transportation center, home to 1/5 of the country's population, as well as the central government.
Managua was nice because it was small. One could walk to go to downtown Managua. I would stroll with my mom and dad to see the stores.
People were very friendly, and they always have been very friendly and very enterprising, hardworking. Thus, Managua was a very lively city.
There was business in every house. One was a tailor, the other fixed shoes, the other was a technician, the other a chauffeur. So everyone had their own business.
People say it was the most beautiful city of Central America in this time. Of course, it has its beauties due to volcanoes and to the lake.
The lake is Lake Managua, providing a scenic border to the capital's bustling downtown. The volcanoes are among the most active in the world, and earthquakes are so common in the region that they are often taken for granted. One of the worst occurs in 1931.
In 1931, a very strong earthquake, the epicenter beneath the center of the town, destroyed nearly completely the city. 2,500 people died. The Earth's surface is covered by huge plates. We call it tectonic plates. They may have a diameter of several thousand kilometers. We here in Central America, we are on the Caribbean plate, and another plate which is coming from the Pacific Ocean is moving against us and shocking our plate, and this movement generates seismic waves. These waves propagate and can cause destruction.
There had been a very major earthquake in 1931, but Managua at that time was a small city, and so people in Managua did not have that idea.
Few Managua residents are thinking about the 1931 earthquake on the evening of December 22nd, 1972. 9-year-old Gustavo Leighton Cruz helps his family decorate their local church.
We were working that night, putting up the Christmas tree, putting up lights, putting up festoons, garlands, putting up angels we made with cardboard and paper.
Gilberto Aguilera and his wife have already received their Christmas gift, a very special one.
We had in that time a baby with only 3 days old. So we were so happy and cautious because the new baby at home.
19-year-old Ligia Sandoval has just started her first year of university. She lives with her family on the outskirts of Managua.
My family was a very big family where the grandmother was the center and all her children, and there were approximately 12 people, maybe 13. We were all there.
Genoveva Bellanger is enjoying a full house for Christmas. Her 3 sons have just come home from university.
They arrived that night because they were on vacation to spend Christmas. So they came from Leon here to Managua. So they got together and they chit-chatted, conversed, talked, and they told their jokes and sang with the guitar.
Family celebrations are interrupted twice that evening by tremors that ripple through the city between 9:30 and 10:15 p.m.
When there was the initial small tremor, my mom said, "Well, should we leave or not? For whatever mess may occur, we better get home." So we went home.
18-year-old Ray Ramirez is attending a friend's birthday party.
Hubo un temblor bastante fuerte. There was a very strong tremor. When I say very strong, I mean it was above the strength of normal tremors. So much so was the strength of the tremor that the party was canceled.
A pesar de que fue fuerte,
even though the tremor was strong, very few people made the decision to take precautions, that something more could happen.
Now that the tremors have subsided, relieved residents of Managua settle in for the night, unaware that the worst is yet to come. December 23rd, 1972. It is just after midnight in the Nicaraguan capital of Managua, and most residents are asleep. The city is quiet, but that is about to change. The earthquake strikes at 12:27 a.m., measuring 6.2 on the Richter scale. In her bedroom, Genoveva Bellanger finds herself lost in a shroud of dust, dirt, and mind-numbing shock as the earth rises beneath her.
It was like I was dumbfounded because it was like everything fell on me. It was all a haze, like I had lost my memory at that moment. I couldn't remember anything, not even my children.
Two of Genoveva's children are in the next room, 8-year-old Virginia and her younger sister.
My sister and I slept in the same bed. There was a lot of dust that had fallen from the adobe house, and they say we were practically covered in dust.
Virginia's older brothers dig through the rubble to try and find their sisters.
They could feel only the dirt, and then they said, "We feel someone's head and someone else's arm." Maybe 5 minutes later, they called to me and said, "Mita, we're right here. We have the girls."
When my brothers banged on the door to break it down, there were other earthquakes. So then there was a lot of fear and a lot of dust in the environment. The tiles were falling from the house.
My bed was shaking, and I shouted to my wife that we should all leave, and I got our son, David, and put him on my shoulders, and we walked out of the house.
Two more major tremors follow on the heels of the first. Oscillating up and down, they level 13 square kilometers of the city in an instant.
After a strong earthquake, there occur always a lot of aftershocks, and they had epicenters different from the main shocks. So houses which were not destroyed by the main shocks later were destroyed by the aftershocks.
Injured during the initial tremor, Ligia Sandoval manages to pull her younger sister out of bed, and not a moment too soon.
After that, the wall fell where we were, and there were a lot of big cinder blocks on top of my sister's bed. It was buried. It was broken with a lot of dirt and cinder blocks on top. If I hadn't managed to get her out, I think she definitely would have died. The walls fell during the second quake, and we were able to get my aunt out. And in that moment of desperation, my aunt wanted them to open the door, but the only thing that was standing was the door. So we were able to get her out by the fallen walls when we realized there were no walls.
For new father Alberto Aguilera, The fierce movement of the ground is like nothing he has ever experienced.
It was a very deep feeling that you never imagine when you see the land moving like the waves of the sea. In my life was the first time to suffer that kind of quake. We have been suffering small quakes in the past, but this was the worst.
In a matter of seconds, everything in downtown Managua is destroyed or damaged. Banks, bakeries, hotels, government offices, all gone. Water, power, and transportation systems are shattered. Gas fires rage through the city core.
When the earthquake began, I wasn't scared. It wasn't until a tile fell on my rib that I began to cry and began to call my mom and dad. And then my dad came and grabbed me and grabbed my sister. He was taking the two of us, and my mom was taking the two smaller ones. After, he brought out some mats and we lay in the street. And you could see below, downtown Managua looked all scarlet, and you could hear explosions.
Everything was dark, and the sky was red because of the fires. And the people screamed, cried. They kneeled and asked God that it all be over because the older ladies, the mothers, were saying that it was the end of the world.
In residential areas, parents search frantically for lost children, and children for lost parents. Many who survive the collapse of their homes face another danger made even more lethal by months of drought.
On the block where I lived, 13 children died. Not because the houses fell or because they were stuck or that. Instead, so much dust was lifted from the walls and from everywhere that the children suffocated.
In my family, there was an uncle of mine who was a doctor, and I saw a mother go by with her son, who was about 8 years old, over her shoulders, carrying him and crying. So she came to our house to look for my uncle, to help her because her boy was hurt. That was when my uncle said that the boy was dead.
I remember our neighbor in front of us. She was looking for her daughter, and her daughter was downtown, and they were dancing in a place, in a party, and there were more than 100 people, and they only two, her daughter and her fiance, were able to go out to rest, were killed.
10 hours earlier, Gilberto Aguilera had picked up his wife and 3-day-old son from the hospital. Now, that hospital is a pile of rubble. It is one of 4 major hospitals destroyed or severely damaged by the quake. As Dr. Gustavo Parellon soon discovers, many of the injured must be tended to in the open air, or not at all.
It was havoc. I still could see that relatives were carrying their dead folks in doors that were used as litters. And the impression I got was that these people had been thrown into a giant powder box. There was nothing that we could do. Most of them were dead already.
It is difficult for authorities to determine the number of dead because so many bodies are buried under debris or burned by fire. Estimates vary from 4 to 10,000, with more than 20,000 injured. Of the 400,000 people living in Managua, more than half are now homeless. 13 square kilometers of the downtown core are completely decimated. Another 13 are severely damaged. Not only has a city been virtually demolished, so has the infrastructure of an entire country. December 23rd, 1972. 3 major tremors have ripped through the heart of the Nicaraguan capital of Managua. 95% of small businesses are gone. Most schools and government buildings have also been destroyed. Total damage is estimated as high as $1 billion in a country whose entire national budget is $120 million.
And so Managua was very chaotic for several days. We did not have any electricity, no potable water. And it was a very devastating situation.
But here in Managua was the center of the whole business and all the activities of the country. So the impact was enormous. The whole country was a turmoil.
I had a motorcycle. So the next morning, I went to take a spin through all of Managua to see everything that had happened. One of the things that most impacted me was when I got to the central part of Managua. A lot of places were on fire there. There was no one putting them out. There was no one. Everything was burning, but there was no one who would do anything.
Aftershocks continue to pummel the city for weeks after the initial tremor. Seismograph equipment records as many as 200 aftershocks per day. Evacuation of the city begins on Christmas Day. The populations of neighboring towns rise sharply as the people of Managua are forced by police and the military to move into the countryside. Some residents stay behind to protect what little they have from looting.
Everyone was hurting, and we said it was a black Christmas for us. Everybody was hurting because to the ones who nothing had happened to, who didn't lose a loved one, they didn't have anything either. They didn't lose family, but they lost their house. They lost everything they had.
The great majority of people went to relatives' homes. And being a tropical country, and also it was not the rainy season when the earthquake took place, then people could sleep out in the open, and this helped in that respect.
Those living in the countryside and in neighboring towns and villages do what they can to help.
I joined CPAD. It was an organization of a group of pastors that were starting with the process of helping the hardest hit. So I placed myself where the storage sheds were, where they received all the donations. So there I joined a group of young people that packed. We packed milk and all of that, you know.
I was 10 years old by that time, and there were boys who were the same age, and we banded together. We would all go with 4 wagons to get water, and on the way back, there was a lady who didn't have any, so we would give her some. And that's how we started to become a group of friends that today, well, we're all men now, you know, and we're still friends.
Help comes from outside Nicaragua as well. Aid from around the world begins to arrive almost immediately. Puerto Rican baseball star Roberto Clemente is just one individual who takes the plight of the Nicaraguan people as his own. A hero of the 1971 World Series, Clemente charters a plane to bring supplies to Managua on December 31st, 1972.
As a response to the needs of the Managua people, then he brought this plane from Puerto Rico to help, and unfortunately it crashed and he perished in the Caribbean.
6 months later, Clemente becomes the first Hispanic to be inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame, honored for heroism on and off the field. Despite the tragedy of the 1972 earthquake in Nicaragua, some believe that on a personal level, the legacy it left behind has a positive side.
The spirit of the Nicaraguan people was not broken down. It was affected because we all grieved and we mourned, but there was a determination to work together.
For Virginia Tenorio, Her experiences in the 1972 earthquake lead her to a lifelong career as a seismologist.
Because it has always drawn my attention. Why does the earth move? They never taught us what an earthquake was, what we had to do at the moment of a tremor. So probably that's why I got the urge to know why earthquakes happen.
Virginia and other experts agree that it's only a matter of time before the city of Managua experiences another major upheaval. The question is, will the government and the people be better prepared?
Managua is still at risk, and always it will be at risk. It's because Managua is situated in the most dangerous site in Nicaragua. It's a fault which has a length of about 10 to 15 kilometers. And in a fault of this type, you can have earthquakes of magnitude 6 or so, maybe a little bit stronger. There will be another earthquake in Managua, but we don't know when.
In this convoluted world we live in here, if it's not the earthquake, it's the war. There are polio epidemics. It's one thing after another going on here. So we're placed here in this world, we live it, and we survive it and we take it with us, but we never lose our enthusiasm, happiness or smile. We dance, we laugh, and each person tries to be happy in their own way.